So you wanna main who the hell? Transition jokes aside, I heard you want to main Thorn, so without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Theshka Alesamorn is nicknamed Thorn for short, as well as for her short temper, and honestly, that's not as challenging to figure out as how to play her effectively. And this pissed off Eldred attacker isn't for the faint of heart. She was the last child born to her homeworld before the Rorelsi claimed it, and you can only imagine her unadulterated rage. Her role as a precise yet agile sniper make her deadly for anyone who can't deal consistent damage from afar and can't close a gap quick enough to deal with her. I guess you could say she's a real thorn in your... You know what? That's low hanging fruit. Let's just move on with the video. Also, I'll be covering more of a run and gun build in this video since that's how I play her, but I will be adding some tips for players who like hanging back, cause Thorn's a lot closer to being a traditional sniper than she is like Oscar Mike. So I just mean that she's a very mobile character, so this isn't, to be diving into the enemies or whatever, cause that's a quick way to catch a loss. Weapon and talent. See, Thorn has a much less traditional kit in terms of first person shooters, where instead of shields and firearms, Thorn decides to not carry a shield, instead relying on her talent, Eldred Vitality, which allows for her to have rapid health regeneration, allowing for her to survive for extended periods on the battlefield without having to recall. And she carries her trusty longbow, Kreshek, which can be augmented to increase range, damage, and accuracy, and each shot can be held and released when the player so chooses to let go of them. For her first skill, we have Volley. She fires a horizontal swath of 5 arrows, each dealing 61 plus damage, and they also ricochet off the world terrain for those sweet skill shots we all know and love. For her second skill, Thorn has Blight, an AoE field of corruption for 6 seconds. Enemies caught within the field take 60 plus damage every 0.5 seconds. It can be augmented to either buff yourself or weaken the enemy, and honestly, it's a win-win either way. Now, for her ultimate skill, Thorn has Wrath of the Wild. After a brief cast period of about a second, she hurls a massive energy bomb that explodes, dealing up to 500 damage and knocking enemies backwards. It's basically a big green nature Nova bomb. And while simplistic, honestly, it just gets the job done. As for her passive, Nature's Curse, enemies hit with a charged arrow are cursed for 8 seconds. Skills and charged arrows deal 35% more damage to cursed targets. Isn't that just beautiful? Onto her Helix for PvP and possibly even PvE depending how you feel about it. Thorn's Helix has the Curse Weaver on the left side and the Huntress on the right side. So judging by the names, you already get an idea more or less what you'll be getting for each side in terms of options. For level 1, you'll get to choose between Swampfoot on the Curse Weaver side, which makes it so enemies damaged by Blight are slowed for a short period of time, which is a must since it makes targets so much easier to pick off. Or you can go with Piercing Volley on the Hunter side, which makes volleys pierce through targets. Kind of expected, and it's a nice skill, but situational as you need constant positioning to get the most out of it. For level 2, you'll get a choice of either Cursed Earth on the Curse Weaver side, which allows all of Thorn's arrows to be cursed while she's touching Blight's field, which is a great skill for placing on yourself when you're far away to maximize your damage output, or if you prefer to be much more mobile, you can go with Fell Wind on the Hunter side, which gives Thorn a 30% movement speed buff while she's touching Blight's field, and it's my preferred choice to combine with the previous option, since if you cast it on yourself, not only will you slow enemies caught in it, but you'll go 60% faster than they will, making heavy use of her agility for one crazy escape. For level 3, you'll get to choose between Curse Weaver's Draw Strength, which allows arrows to penetrate multiple targets. Not bad, but think of what I said about Volley. It's pretty position reliant, however, it's not useless. Or you can go with Huntress's Burst Propulsion, which in addition to dealing damage, Thorn's melee can now propel her backwards and open a gap between her and the enemy, which comes much more in handy than the former option, just because when Battleborns like Wrath or El Dragon are in your face, you can get a head start on that escape I was talking about before. For level 4, you can choose between Curse Weaver's Kreshek's Judgment, which allows volley to curse targets on hit, a beautiful option since you can volley then just go to town with extra damage. Or you can roll with Huntress's Knockout, which allows volley to shoot arrows in a wider arc, adding +2 arrows to the skill, which is nice but just not as reliable as getting more damage on them once you learn how to land the volley itself. For level 5, you can choose either Curse Weaver's Hextension, which has a bonus damage and duration on cursed enemies by an extra 10% damage and an extra 4 seconds duration, which is a no-brainer since it'll allow much more damage to be dealt. Or you can go with Hexanguination, which is a bitch to read. Nah, but seriously, it allows curse shots to deal bleed damage to afflicted enemies, which would be a more viable option hadn't the previous one been possible. For level 6, you can roll with either Curse Weaver's Brutal Blight, which increases the AoE damage by 15%, pretty nice overall and your best choice if you're more of a hangback sniper, or you can go with Huntress's Swift Volley, which adds a -20% cooldown reduction to volley, which is best for you if you're more of a mobile sniper and you use volley to curse enemies. For level 7, you can choose either Curse Weaver's Eagle Eye, which increases the accuracy of Thorn's standard attack by 50%, which may be super useful if there will be larger maps in the future, but not necessarily if you just practice with Thorn and get used to her base accuracy and range. Or you can go with Huntress's Vaulting Hunter. Oh, I get it, like Vault Hunter, like Borderlands, cause you know, like Gearbox, it's cool, it really is. So anyways, this upgrades the height of Thorn's jump, which if you've played Wrath or maybe Benedict, you're probably not too keen on jump upgrades, but I assure you, going with the choice makes a huge difference. You can easily, and I mean easily, outrun or catch enemies just by how easy it is to get over cliffs and gaps with this. She can get away or get to places that others can't easily get to without using skills, like Phoebe's teleport or Melka's high jump, and she gets it for her basic jump. It needs no cooldown other than when you come back from Earth after breaking orbit. It's just super useful, alright, and probably one of my favorite skills on Thorn. For level 8, you can go with Curse Weaver's Enduring Blight, which increases Blight's duration by 6 seconds, which is great if you use Blight as a buff. Or you can go with Huntress's Distant Blight for cursing and slowing enemies from afar since it doubles the cast range for Blight, which honestly, it's a pretty great strategy. It can also be used to pick off people who are running away, but hey, you know, whatever. For level 9, you can go with Curse Weaver's Archer's Boon, which allows any damage dealt by volley to cause a 30% lifesteal, which really isn't that great unless it comes into like a 1v1 and it's clutch and you're both like one hit to die and fucking, you know, you hit him and then you can take 2 hits. Point is, or you can go with Huntress's Kreshek's Rage, which increases volley's damage by 15%, and man, it is just crazy powerful at this point, so you know this is a way to go. Last but not least, at level 10, you can choose between Wild Judgment, which allows volley to bounce around the world 5 times, dealing less damage but detonating with every bounce, which would be ridiculous in a close quarters map, but honestly not so much since a little shift in position while casting could lead to a wasted ult. Or you can go with Huntress's Earth Render, which after Wrath of the Wild has detonated, it leaves behind the Blight, which is our go-to option since if they didn't die from the explosion, you can just start blighting and volleying and shooting and just everything to finish them off while they're slowed and cursed. A beautiful conclusion. As for the 3 equipment slots, take one for health regeneration, one for attack damage, and one for attack speed for more DPS, or you can go 1 health regeneration, 1 for cooldown, and 1 for movement speed for far more agility and survivability. The choice is yours. As for synergy, Phoebe and Thorn make a killer combination since Thorn can slow and weaken enemies from afar, and Phoebe can eviscerate them up close as well as further slow them. Both their ults cause AoE damage, and since Thorn's ult can be outfitted to leave behind a Blight and Phoebe's ult Blade Cascade causes AoE damage for a period of time, you'll get massive AoE damage on targets, and that's without even using your standard attacks. Well, there you have it, our guide and breakdown to Thorn, the Huntress. Hope you guys enjoyed and don't hesitate to ask who'd you like to be analyzed in future breakdowns. Peace!